If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With the Capital One Venture X card, you earn unlimited double miles on everything you buy. Plus, you get premium benefits at a collection of luxury hotels when you book on Capital One Travel. And with Venture X, you get access to over 1,000 airport lounges worldwide. Open up a world of travel possibilities with a Capital One Venture X card. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Blog Talk Radio.
The following broadcast is brought to you by the iGolf Sports Network.
Golf Talk Live is sponsored by the iGolf Sports Network and Golf Tips Magazine. Here's Andrew to tell you more about our sponsors.
iGolf Sports is a live stream broadcast and media production company providing quality programming designed to attract the golfing enthusiast. And Golf Tips, the game's most in-depth instruction magazine, including reviews on the latest equipment, tips from top teaching professionals, all designed to help you improve from tee to green. Welcome to Golf Talk Live with your host, Ted Odorico. Join Ted each week as he speaks with some of the best in golf. This week's special guest will join us a bit later. But first up is another great discussion on Coach's Corner. So let's introduce tonight's Coach's Corner panel.
All right. Good evening, everybody. And once again, welcome to Golf Talk Live. I appreciate you guys tuning in live every Thursday and listening to the program. And, of course, we are live from 6 to 8 p.m. Central here on the blogtalkradio.com network. And it's hard to believe, but we are in November. I don't know where. We were just talking off air, the gang from the Coach's Corner panel. And I don't know where time is going, but here we are. We're coming close to the holidays. Thanksgiving is just around the corner, and then, of course, Christmas and Hanukkah and every other holiday that you want to celebrate through this time of year is just hop, skip, and a jump away from that. So I don't know where it's going, but let's enjoy it while it's here. All right, I got a great show for you tonight. As I mentioned, we've got Coach's Corner going to be kicking things off here. I'll introduce the panel here in just a second. And then a little bit later on, I'm going to be joined by my very special guest this evening, Taylor Herber. He is the VP of Sales for Blue Tees Golf, and we're going to talk about some of the stuff that they've got going. And they've got some specials, as I noted, on their website for Black Friday coming up. We'll talk about that when Taylor comes on the show. But let me introduce the panel tonight. First up is Brandon Stooksbury. He's the head golf professional at the historic Metairie Country Club outside New Orleans. He's an Amazon #1 best-selling author of 2 books, The Wedge Book and The Putter Book. And for the last 10-plus years, he's been ranked among top 10 teachers in his state by Golf Digest and was part of the magazine's Elite Best Young Teachers list. He's 3-time PGA Teacher of the Year and a regular contributor in golf media around the world, plus a Golf Tips magazine top 25 instructor. Also rounding out the panel is Jamie Leno-Zimron. She's a Class A LPGA teacher professional. She's also a 6th degree Aikido black belt, somatic psychologist, corporate speaker, and mind-body fitness trainer. And she graduated Phi Beta Kappa from Stanford University, and she's the creator of Ki Golf, The Centered Way. And last but not least, my good buddy Pete Buchanan. He is the founder, director of instruction, and owner of Plain Simple Golf LLC, which, of course, houses the Plain Simple Golf Circuit and the Simple Swing Repeater Training Brace. And he's been helping golfers focus on building a repeatable swing, and he's been teaching this great game of golf for over 30 years. So, guys, welcome to Coach's Corner panel.
Thanks, Ted. Good to be here.
Thanks, Ted. Great company.
Thanks as always, Ted. Looking forward to it.
All right. We're going to talk about, since we're getting close, as I was mentioning to all of you off air, we're going to start off with being that, we've only got a couple of shows for you guys this tonight, and then I think one more that you guys will be coming back in December. So we're going to kind of end things a little bit light, but I want to have, a little bit of fun with it. And I think for a lot of our golfers out there, there's a lot of new golfers that have come in over the last couple of years through this pandemic. And I think, Brandon, I want to start with you. And we're going to talk about, obviously a lot of people have made the decision to play the game. And I think one of the areas that we really, as a newer player, need to focus on is equipment. And I want to split this up. I don't want to do so much a generic discussion, but I want to split things up when looking for equipment. So, for an example, a new player to the game, they don't necessarily have to go out and spend a lot of money buying new equipment per se, but they do need to make sure whatever equipment they have, whether it's a hand-me-down, whether it's some used equipment that they've purchased somewhere, that they do need to make sure that it's fitted properly for them. And particularly, I know that you like to specialize in the short game. I know you cover all of it, but I would really like you to answer this and explain for the listeners, because this is something that a lot of people ask, is about the wedges in their golf bag. How many do they really need for, let's say, a new player, maybe a higher handicap player, and maybe a more advanced player that may want to have additional wedges? What should they have in the bag as far as wedges are concerned?
Well, that's a great question. I think you're right. It is often misunderstood or, frankly, not paid attention to sometimes in our industry. And so I'll answer that question in two ways. If you take the ranked beginner, meaning someone that is brand new to the game, which we've had a lot of those come in, during the pandemic as well, they don't need, frankly, a whole lot of clubs all the way around. And really until you get to the point to where you're hitting it reasonably solid, a reasonable percentage of the time you're swinging at it, and you have a reasonable amount of club head speed, you're not really going to get the benefit of multiple clubs, meaning your 6-iron, 7-iron, and 8-iron might all three go the same yardage because you're not generating enough speed in the beginning to get enough ball speed coming off the face to get the advantage of the less loft and longer shaft length, et cetera, et cetera. The same thing kind of happens with wedges. And so the benefits that come from having multiple wedges really are lost on you until most of your short game shots you're able to hit reasonably solid. So in the beginning, I would say go with something right down the middle of the road, a 56-degree wedge with some sort of middle kind of bounce, 10, maybe 12 degrees of bounce, something kind of right down the middle and safe. As you continue to get better, as your skills improve, I am a big fan of more wedges as opposed to less wedges. And briefly, I'll explain why. If I stood you in the middle of the fairway and you were 30 yards from a hole, the ball had to carry roughly 20 yards and then it could roll roughly 10. I could stand you there and I could give you one swing to make and 4 different wedges, and you're going to get 4 different ball flights with one swing.
Mm-hmm.
If you only had 2 wedges, then that would mean you'd have 2 ball flights, and then you'd have to do something to manufacture the other 2 with the wedges that you have. Now, look, lots of people play that way, but from a skill standpoint, that takes a lot higher level of skill development to, quote-unquote, manufacture shots. So I'm generally more in favor of more wedges as opposed to fewer, especially given that clubs these days are getting stronger and stronger lofted, which is creating sort of this odd gap between your pitching wedge and what used to be a sand wedge or even a gap wedge. And so that's making it a little bit more challenging. But most people, frankly, can't get the benefit out of the longer irons on the upper end of the set anyway, so they probably should have some room. And if they have room, I'm much more of a fan of a minimum of 3 wedges. That might be a pitching wedge, a sand wedge, a lob wedge, or even 4 might be a pitching wedge, gap wedge, sand wedge, lob wedge. Hopefully that answers your question succinctly without spending too much time.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And I agree 100%. I think for the less skilled player, I agree. I mean, Tom Kite many years ago, was one of the early pioneers, if you will, of having extra wedges in the bag. And shortly afterwards, we started seeing a lot of other players adopt that same philosophy. But the key emphasis was that they were all tour players that were doing it. A lot of amateurs tried to follow suit, but as you pointed out very eloquently, for somebody that can't really generate a lot of club head speed, they're not going to get the benefit of those additional wedges at that point. And as they progress, then, they can add 1 or 2 or 3 extra wedges in the bag as it becomes appropriate. But I like your demonstration of the 4 wedges because you're exactly right. I think that, even though it's still the same distance, there might be other factors involved. It might be windier, so you might need to get that ball flight a little bit lower and trying to finesse or finagle one wedge for 4 different shots is a lot tougher than having one swing and 4 different wedges. So I like your answer. I think it was great. Jamie, I'm going to move on to you.
Ted,
and I want to.
Ted, hang on 1 second. Hang on. I'm sorry.
Yep.
I just need to add one quick thing. You mentioned tour players, and I just want to tell the listeners, you sort of have to be careful when you watch the tour players, because the tour players, most of them use fewer wedges as opposed to more. And so a lot of times when I'm telling this, especially in larger groups or giving seminars, someone always asks that question, well, wait a minute, how come he being, a successful tour player, uses sand wedge everywhere? Or Jack Nicklaus is a great example. And that answer is very simple. It's 2 parts. Number one, they can. They're a tour player. They can do whatever they want. They're the most highly skilled athletes on the planet with a wedge in their hand, so they can do whatever they want, right? Number two, their conditions are very different than ours are, right? And so their ability to spin and control the ball is at a much higher level, and the conditions they're playing on are considerably firmer. Most of the time, they don't need the other wedges for the conditions that they play in that we might, as amateurs, going out and playing at our public golf course or at our local club. So just keep that in mind. Tour players sometimes aren't the best model.
Right. Well said. Jamie, I want to come to you. And again, I want to stick on equipment. I'm going to spin things a little bit differently for you on this here. And again, obviously, we can factor in a less accomplished player and then a more skilled player in your examples. But for a less skilled player, there's a lot of different options. Again, depending on the level of entrance into the game, it may not necessarily be appropriate for them to go out and spend a lot of money buying a whole complete new set. And there may be, even though typically 14 clubs in the bag is what's standard for and what's legal, obviously, in tournament play, but may not, again, be appropriate or necessary for some of our less skilled players to have all 14 clubs in the bag. So maybe you could kind of give us a general overview of what you try to encourage some of the newer players coming in, again, maybe a higher handicap, and you may not know what their handicap is early on, but a less skilled player, and then maybe some of the adjustments that you might recommend for a more highly skilled player when they're putting that set together.
I would say, Ted, for newer players, a big consideration is their irons and their hybrids and woods. Obviously we need to have a driver and a putter in the bag. And as we were just starting to talk about, how, the question of wedges and how many wedges to carry. But I would say that in terms of the irons, that's something to really look at. And for newer players, it's really, or higher handicap players, it's really seeming that they do better with sort of the hybrid clubs from 6 iron up, even a 5 iron. I've seen some even start at 7 iron. So, those clubs are a little bit easier to hit, and they're more forgiving, they're easier to hit. And so I see no problem with newer players or higher handicap players using clubs where, maybe they start with a couple fairway type hybrids that are maybe down to the equivalent of a 3 or 4 iron. But then, go with just go with the hybrids, pretty much. And then, of course, have your at least 8, 9 iron wedges, a couple of wedges. And the wedges are an issue that I think people need to, each player needs to kind of come to themselves and play with it. So what I mean by that is, should you have like a 54 or a 56 or a 60 or a 58, maybe a 54 and a 58, or do you need a 56 and a 60, and, these kinds of things, or 52 and a 54. So, I think it really helps to find out if people like to do bump and run shots, how they're doing with a bit more of a pitch shot or even a kind of a flop shot, something that's going up in the air and landing on the green. And, of course, newer players tend to like to just, drop the ball on the green, let it run some. A little bit harder for them to learn that little pop shot. But, and some people like to, for example, learn to play with the club face a little bit so that maybe they'll carry, 2 wedges instead of 3, for example, because they know how to play with this one club that they really somehow like the look and feel of. So I think these are really individual determinations. It really helps to work with your player on that. But those are the kinds of things I think you need to look at. And is a person comfortable with an iron at 5-iron, or are they more comfortable with a kind of more hybrid kind of 5-iron club? And then in terms of fairway woods, some people really have a lot of trouble with a 3-wood. Sometimes I'll steer them to a 4-wood or even a 5-wood, and that's fine. And then they can get into their hybrid kind of iron, hybrid irons. So again, I think it's really individual, and so many people I've noticed just have their individual preference, what looks good, what feels good. And I think that that's the most important thing, because you want your player to have confidence with that club in their hand.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, Jamie, too, is, for the more skilled player, typically tends to, or at least for many years, has been more of a blade when it comes to their irons, because they're able to work the ball much better, even though the ball doesn't work quite as well as it used to be in some respects. And I think there's a lot of more forgiving irons and hybrids and things out there on the market. And for the better player, obviously they're going to be more in tune of what they need and what they can hit. But I also, a lot of times, I've seen some better players that will go out and try to buy themselves some extra strokes by spending more money on equipment. And that's not always necessarily the smartest thing either. I mean, I think it's more about the fitting. Would you agree that, you could go out and spend $1,000, let's say, on new equipment, as opposed to, say, $2,000 or $3,000? And if you're better fitted with the $1,000 than you are the $3,000 set of clubs, you're more than likely going to have more success out in the golf course. Would you agree with that?
Well, fitting is the primary thing, right? That is just absolutely essential. And, I mean, we have this idea, of course, that more expensive somehow means better, and that isn't necessarily true. Like you say, if it's not fit, lie angle, length, shafts, all this sort of thing. And again, I think that the look and feel of the club is really important. And I also think that it's important to get the ego out of the way, particularly with better players. And actually with male players, if I may say so, I find women, they just want to hit it well and feel happy, and like they're getting good distance, they're getting consistency, feel sweet, they know what they're doing, they're starting to get the real differentiation. This is newer players. Better players know the differentiation in their distances, and they know what their distances are with each club. That's important. And then, of course, with better players, that's important, but not to have the ego in the way, like, you're embarrassed because you have a 4-iron hybrid instead of a 4-iron blade. Like, why have an ego there? And as it happens, I think it's been – so one thing that I think has been kind of nice to see with tour players, both on PGA and LPGA Tour, the men and the women, is that their ego's been kind of disappearing. They'd rather have clubs that are feeling good to them and that are working. So, they've got a hybrid or 2 in their bag now. It's not like some kind of shame for even a tour player, right? So I think that we have to take our cues from that, get our egos out of the way, and really find clubs that are fit well for us, that we feel confident and comfortable with, that we feel repeatable with, and that are fit well for us. Then we're going to have success.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the visual component is I think just as important as the fitting, because if you don't like the look of the equipment, because there are so many different styles in that, it can really play on your psyche a little bit. Pete, I'm going to come to you with one final scenario with equipment here, and I know you're probably thinking how much more can we talk about equipment that hasn't already been answered, but believe me, you're going to understand in a moment. I want to talk about the grip, and there's a couple of things, scenarios that I want to pitch out here. And the first one, obviously, maybe you can generally give us an overview of the importance of the grip. Maybe, again, how often should we be changing those grips, depending on the level of play. And then I've got another question I'm going to ask you, or a scenario I'm going to give you, and I'd like to get your feedback on that. So maybe you could give us a general overview of the grip, because that's an area, believe it or not, even with fittings, we get everything fit up in that, and people seem to forget about the grip. And I've seen some people come out for lessons, and, I mean, if you were able to unravel all of their grips and lay it out, you could probably skate on it. They're so slick and so smooth. So give us an overview of the grip, and then I'm going to come back. I've got a follow-up question for you.
Well, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. You've got to have grips that you can hold on to, obviously. Those that play a lot, they might want to change them, halfway through the season. If they don't play a lot, they change them every season. If your clubs sit through the winter, I regrip them the next spring when you come out. Just sitting and doing nothing in the bottom of a bag is not always really good for golf grips, and so they can break down a little bit. So you always want to start a new season off with grips that you can hold on to. So it's not very expensive to do. So I would always recommend that the grips be new and the grips be the right size. That's important too, so they fit into your hands, and the size can also be based on the shot shape you're trying to hit or trying to avoid. I mean, you can change the size of the grip depending on what ball flight you're looking at. Do you want me to stick just with the grip itself? Or you want to talk about the actual grip you hold onto the club with? Or you want to advance into that, or just stay with the grips on the club?
With the grips on the club for the time being.
Yeah.
What I want to ask, what I want to throw out there though, real quick, is you mentioned about the different sizes. We have our typical standard size grips that we often get when you purchase a set of clubs if you don't make any changes. And for most people, they tend to be pretty thin, especially for somebody like myself that has pretty decent sized hands. And then obviously you have a mid-size and then an oversized grip. So obviously, again, it goes to Jamie's point. It's a comfort thing as well. I mean, it's not just the looks, but it's also the feel. But I want to ask you this scenario. Obviously, we have different players, some who have very quick hands, some that turn their hands over very quickly, and others that maybe not so much. Is the grip important to help combat some of that? I'll give you an example. If you've got somebody that, let's say, typically turns their hands over very quickly, either hits a draw or even a hook many times, and maybe is using a standard grip, would it be prudent to have them maybe step up, again, assuming that the grip is going to fit properly in their hands, to maybe a mid or even an oversized in some cases? And what about the reverse, somebody that maybe doesn't have quick hands and is not easily able to turn over? If they're playing a larger grip, does it work in the opposite, that maybe if they go to a smaller grip, a little thinner grip, it's going to help alleviate some of that? Or maybe we should forget that altogether and just do something different. I want to get your thoughts on that.
No, that's a great point. The grip size can definitely be something that can help with the ball flight. Those that tend to have very fast hands or quick hands that tend to close the face, the larger you get the grip, the more out of the fingers and into the palm it will sit, and therefore it'll slow the hands down. And so therefore you're going to be able to get the club face a little bit more open, and it works in the opposite direction. If you have somebody who has too large of a size of a grip, it gets up into the palm, they can't get it into their fingers, it's going to slow the hands down. And if they already sliced, they're going to be worse than that if they have the face open. So you can thin the grip down. It'll fit more into their fingers. It'll make the hands more active, and that'll help them to close the face up. So grip size is definitely a big piece that you need to look at when you're fitting golf clubs, for sure.
Yeah, and the reason why I asked that is because I've played at various types of grips, and I've used different thicknesses and so forth, and I'm a pretty decent player, even to this day, and I've noticed, obviously with a little thinner grip and that, my hands are turning over a little quicker than I'd like sometimes, so I tend to play a little bit of a mid to oversized grip range because it just seems to fit comfortably in my hands. And then obviously I'm finding I'm striking the ball much better. So, a lot of people don't realize that, don't think about that. And when they're getting fitted, it's not just about how it fits in the hand, but also the type of player they are has to be factored in as well. Would you agree with that, Pete?
No question. Oh, no question at all. And, you talk about comfort, the grip size change can be a little bit different when they do that. But I've always found when they hit it straighter, that comfort zone changes in a hurry. It doesn't take long.
Yeah.
Those grips will feel really good when they start hitting it better. So, but yeah, there's definitely a change. I don't have very large hands, but I play an oversized grip because I don't like any shot going left. So I use the grip size to keep the face open. So it definitely is, something to do. I pick up some of my juniors and I pick up theirs, and I can hook those really easy because the grips are so small. My hands can be very
Yep.
active, but that's not something I want to do personally for me. So, yeah, definitely the grip size is something you can use to help with the ball flight.
And one more thing, just to pick up on something you were going to say a little while ago, and then we continued on, and that was the actual grip itself, not the grips that are attached at the end of the club, but the actual gripping of the club. There's a lot of different ways of doing that. That can also help maybe some folks that are struggling a little bit. Maybe you could just, again, touch a little bit on that, the different ways we actually grip the club that can be beneficial for maybe somebody that has difficulty, especially earlier on in their learning stages of the game.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, you want to make sure that, for the most part, the grip gets down in your fingers, and the fingers of both hands. And the hands, when they get on there, are facing each other. And you want to make sure that the hands are snug up against each other. You don't want to split them apart. Being in St. Louis, I get a lot of these juniors, and they play hockey, so you can imagine how they grip the golf clubs. So I'm always trying to get their hands back together because they want to split them apart. But, it's important not only where it fits in your hands, but also the angle to which you set them on the handle. The more to the right you set them, the more you can close the face. The more to the left you set them, the more it'll open. So you can use not only the style, but the angle at the position of the hands on the grip at address to steer the golf ball in one direction or the other. So, yeah, the grip is, to me, it's one of the biggest functions because it's what you hold on to, and its function is to control the club face. And so it has a very important role. So not only go ahead.
All I was going to say is you're exactly right, and that's, as I said in the very beginning when I had you address this is an area that a lot of golfers, when it comes to equipment, really overlook. Obviously, more seasoned players that play with some frequency, they know to change their grips. They know to make sure they're using the right size grip for them. But a lot of our novice players really don't know. They don't really understand the equipment. They just think, okay, well, it's a 7-iron. What's the difference between this one and that one? And they don't really understand some of the intricacies. And I think it's important that if you want to get out and learn this game, it's like anything. It's like, if you want to screw a screw into the wall, you use a screwdriver. You don't use a hammer. Opposingly, if it's a nail, well, then you can use the hammer. But so I think people having a better understanding of what the equipment does and how it works and how it can be fitted properly for you to get the most advantage out of it. So I think you answered everything I needed, and hopefully the listeners that are tuning in, you get a general understanding of that as well. Great discussion, guys, on equipment. Brandon, I'm going to come back to you, and this is a little bit different. We're going to talk about learning the rules. There's a lot of rules in golf, and I know some people hate rules. They want to be a little bit more flexible. And I think there is some room for flexibility for our beginning golfers that maybe are obviously not playing in tournaments, things like that. We can be a little bit more flexible. But if you were to sort of boil it down, if you were to take the rule book and boil it down in its simplest form, what are some of the rules that the average player really needs to understand that's going to better help them navigate around the course? What are your thoughts?
Well, that's a loaded question, Ted. There's a lot to unpack there. I think there are lots of guides and things out there. You could sit down and search on Google. Most needed golf rules. I mean, Golf Digest has done some things like that in the past where the 10 most important rules. But look, I think if you boiled it down, what to do if you hit it out of bounds, what to do if you hit it in a hazard. I don't call them hazards anymore, in a penalty area. How that penalty area differs if it's marked red versus yellow. How to mark your golf ball on a green, how to replace it on a green. I mean, those aren't really rules; those are more procedures. But the things that you're going to run into every single time that you play the round of golf, I think are probably the ones that are the most important. The ones that the rules that aren't necessarily penalties if you break them, but are more etiquette related. Where to stand, who goes first, how to determine when you putt and what order you putt. I mean, you're not going to lose a stroke if you putt out of order or stand in the wrong place. But it tends to make people that aren't new to the game uncomfortable if you don't do those things, how to keep pace. Again, that's not a rule that you're going to be penalized if you break, but it's certainly a piece of etiquette that I think is important for any new golfer, to learn. And so those are the things that I think are probably important to keep in mind. Much like you said in the very beginning, I am way less concerned. I'm going to see if I can say this in a way that doesn't get me barbecued by the listeners. I am way less concerned about us keeping rules and way more concerned with us having fun when we playing quickly, and enjoying it. And so, I think the rules are important. Please don't misunderstand that statement. But I think first we are to approach the rules in a way that help us enjoy the game more, be more comfortable around other people that enjoy the game and are long-time players of the game, so that we can keep pace and that we don't, end up putting ourselves in a situation where we feel embarrassed because we just didn't understand the etiquette or the flow of the game that someone that's more seasoned might. And so that's kind of how I would approach that.
Yeah, and I think that's important. And again, as I prefaced in the beginning, I think for players who are going to get more involved in golf and certainly going to be playing in tournaments, they obviously have to have a much better understanding of the rules of not just the etiquette, but the actual rules of play. Otherwise, they're going to get penalized and might actually be disqualified from the tournament altogether. But I think for, as you put it, having fun for new players and beginners, I think some general rules, etiquette obviously is a big one. What to do when, if you hit it out of bounds. A lot of people that have never played before don't even know what a provisional ball is. So there's a few generic rules, I think, and parts of etiquette that quite often when you get a new player coming to the course saying, well, I don't know what to do or how do I do it, it's really more of a guide and helping you navigate around the course. And there's some of the rules that actually can help you take advantage of situations, again, that can actually, in the end, save you strokes if you know what to do under certain circumstances. So you don't have to sit and go, because it is a pretty thick little book with a lot of different rules. Again, unless you're playing at a high level, I don't think you have to go crazy and know every single rule, but it is a good idea to pick up a rule book and look through and get yourself generally familiarized with some of the things there. I'm going to pass on this for you, Jamie, because I think, again, it's fairly generic on how we handle that. But I want to talk about, with you, improving your game. There's a lot of different aspects of it, everything from lessons to reading material, maybe reading books. Certainly you can indulge with some good solid video instruction by qualified instructors that you can do. There's a lot of different ways. Again, taking maybe a more novice player, getting them started. What are some things that maybe you like to do, recommend? Is there some books out there that you might recommend, might make for a good read to help them understand a little bit more about the game? And again, that could help them to comprehend some of the things that they're going to be faced with out there. And then also as far as instruction, what do you typically recommend for somebody that's just coming into the game? If they want to improve, what are some things that you're going to recommend to them?
Well, that's a really big question.
I know.
There is so much information.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
There is so much information out there.
Water it down, Jamie. Just water it down a little bit. You know what I mean. But I'm just trying to give you some general things. You can pick any one or go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say is that golf is one thing where I think a person really needs some lessons, particularly in the beginning. I think it's really important to get off to a good start. And a lot of people say, golf isn't quite as natural as other sports because we're just standing there, right? We're not running around. And, there are definitely some skills that need to be learned. That my approach has kind of a martial arts background to it, meaning I'm not so into just sort of a one-off lesson here and there, and particularly for beginners. I think it's important to approach this as training so that there is a a consistency and a coherency and a consistency to learning the game, because there are a lot of basics to learn. I think having some fitness, having the proper connection to your lower body, to your center, and then the connection from the lower to the upper body, having flexibility, having strength in the legs, understanding what we call an athletic stance, or some power in the base and understanding how that works, so that you have some strength and presence in your legs, understanding the grip, getting the fundamentals, which I call PGA, posture grip alignment, and LPGA, love your posture grip alignment, so that you feel comfortable that you're setting up for success. And then understanding the three elements of the swing, which is the backswing, downswing impact, the square face impact, and then follow through. I like to start with the short shots, and putting and short shots. This is the way that many people, even Tiger Woods, learned to play golf, which was from green to tee, not from tee to green. Most people want to just get out there, take a big swing, try to hit their driver, and then kind of get, whittled down. But I always say nobody popped out of the womb an adult, which to me is like a driver swing. We start out small, right? When we have to learn to walk and talk, and then we can run, and then we can, do all sorts of things. So I think it's important to learn just the basics of the target line, the hitting zone, back, little back, match that up to the follow through, and then square club face at impact, some of these kinds of basics, and really getting that through to people and understanding what they're really trying to do in the golf swing, and, getting a putting stroke, a little chip shot, some shots from 100 yards in. To me, it's what I call the micro to macrocosmic way to learn. Get the micro down and get some solid impact, get comfortable with your fundamentals, and then you can just, add on the longer clubs, right? To me, that's like getting to high school and college and then becoming a full-fledged adult. Yay, if we can hit a driver. So I like to take a systematic approach and get people comfortable. And I think it's important not to just jump around. It's fine to go, okay, here's putting, here's short game, here's mid-range game, here's the long game, and a driver. Understand those elements, and then you can work on each one, but consciously, not jumping around and around, and on a solid foundation. So that's very much my approach, and I find that that's true in learning to do anything. And if you can get those fundamentals down, and you are really, again, from that sort of martial arts mastery, self-mastery point of view, present in your body, you know how to use your body, you know the order of movement, and you're not just kind of swinging at it with your arms or any way you can try to kind of hit it. You need to understand balance, right, center, evenness, all this sort of thing. So, that's really my approach. And for me, I think, any kind of instruction that emphasizes some of the lower body and the core and not simply an arm swing, I think is really important. Jack Nicklaus himself, I always say this, said that golf's played between the arches of your feet. So understanding the feet up to the knees and hips, and then up to the shoulders and hands, all this sort of thing. So that's really my approach. One other thing I would say is, again, I'm not a big fan of a one-off lesson. Perhaps if you're a better player and you just have a question about something, that's one thing. I'm also not a fan of the tweak method, which is, kind of do this, do that, fix this, add a little here. The golf swing, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So we have to have an opportunity to just kind of get the natural swing and understand how, how to throw a ball, how to move a ball forward, how the body works for that, and then get some details. And so it's back and forth between the details and the full swing, just that easy swing motion. So that's what I would say. Yep. Again, coherency is important, and consistency, with also a clarity around the need for practice. You're not going to get anywhere unless you practice.
Well said. I couldn't agree more. And, we see so many players, especially new players to the game, number one, don't practice as much as they should, and they focus on trying to hit the ball and not really focusing on getting the swing down. And really, my father used to tell me growing up as a kid, he said, once you learn how to swing, it's a matter of the ball getting in the way And, so many people focus on the opposite, is trying to perfect everything and trying to hit the golf ball and not really just learning to swing and getting that nice fluid movement. Pete, I'm going to come to you, and I'm going to get you to talk a little bit about another area that, we talked earlier about the grip, but another area in golf that a lot of people miss the boat, and understandably so, because there's 1,000 different brands and types and whatnot on the market, but is the golf ball. So many people, we all have maybe our favorite manufacturer or brand of golf ball, but that's a decision, too, that really needs to be looked at very carefully, especially for some of our newer golfers that don't maybe generate as much club head speed. Maybe playing a Pro V1 is not maybe the best golf ball that they should be playing with. Maybe you can kind of give us some examples of what they should be looking for at what stages of their game.
Well, that's a loaded question as well, but we'll tackle through this one.
I'm full of them tonight, guys. So
yeah, you're full of it tonight, Ted. That's for sure. No, I'm just kidding. Basically, I approach golf balls two different ways. Do you want it to spin more, or do you want it to go further? Which do you want? So if you want it to spin more, you're going to have to get a ball that's a little bit softer, one that's going to, react on the face a little bit more. But you also have to remember, if you already curve the ball a lot, taking a ball that spins more is going to curve it more. So you have to be careful, getting a ball that spins too much. The beginning players, I'd like to get them a ball that's going to last a long time. They don't have to worry about spin right now. Get something that's, a little bit harder, and it's not going to, the compression thing is, we hardly even talk about that anymore with everything that's been going on with, we did an experiment at one time, and the harder the ball was, the further it went. It didn't matter what the speed was. And so, you're looking for a golf ball that's going to last a little bit longer, one that's probably not going to spin as much. The newer players need it to go further. They don't need it to stop quicker. They need it to go further. And so you're looking at different brands of, ones that will give you, a little bit more distance, a little bit more life to the golf ball. Pro V1s for the new players, they're expensive and they spin a lot, and you really don't want to look for those for those players. You're looking for a ball that's, fairly economical, one that is, built for distance, because that means it's going to last a little bit longer and it's going to spin a little bit less. And so that's really how I approach it. What are you trying to do with your golf ball? And that's a loaded question as well, because you'll get a lot of players who say, well, can you teach me how to spin it backwards? And, well, there's a lot to that. You have to have the right ball, the right conditions, and you have to have the right impact, which most of them don't have. And so they don't have an impact necessary that's really going to spin the ball enough to get it to back it up. And in most cases, I'll tease them a little bit. I say, well, you don't hit it far enough forward, so why do you want it to go backwards? So let's work on getting it going forward. So, that's a tough one, because, the golf balls are built a little bit more for spin, but you've got to have some pretty good contact on those to get them to spin like they see on TV. And, those guys and gals, they've got the impact to make it happen. So really, to me, I'm not looking at different brands or anything, but just kind of what you're trying to do with the ball. Spin it more, or make it go farther and last longer.
Well, and the level of some great points, and you're exactly right. I think that there's a number of factors, and it's like anything. When you're out purchasing something, it's nice to play something that everybody else is playing, but if it may not fit your game, if you're somebody that's barely swinging at 80 miles an hour club head speed, and you're trying to play a ball that somebody that swings at 110 or 115 club head speed, you're not necessarily the same ball is not necessarily going to give you the same benefit as does that individual. So, club head speed is a factor, and also the consistency that you're hitting your clubs. If you're not hitting your irons very crisp and solid, then having a ball that spins a little bit more and stops on the green is really kind of irrelevant, because you're not really making solid contact. So you want to play, I think for the newer players, you want to play a ball that is going to be more forgiving and is obviously going to give you the most distance as possible, given your level of play. And then as you, again, develop, if you want to move and transition to something different, that's fine. But, to go out and spend, $40 to $60 on a dozen golf balls that you're more than likely going to lose most of them, the only thing you're going to be doing in the clubhouse is crying that you lost $60 worth of golf balls. So, go out and spend a little bit less money. But that's my point is, and the reason why I bring that up is you'd be surprised at how many people, and I know you all three of you have seen this, how many people will be going out and they're playing a top brand golf ball and they just don't really have the game. And they say, well, what difference does it make? Well, there is, as you pointed out, and I'm sure there's many other factors as well, when it comes to selecting a golf ball that need to be considered. And this is something that your pro can help you with. During your lesson, you can talk about these are discussions you should be having about them, and you can kind of do a comparison. I mean, what's really great now in the industry, and especially with the wonderful world of the internet, is you can go in and there's so many organizations that are doing comparison between the manufacturers and the different types of golf balls that you can see how it performs and certain tests and things like that. And obviously you got to be careful of that too, but you get a general overview and understanding of what each of the balls are doing. And again, maybe you can experiment a little bit and try a couple of different types and see which works best for you. But I think it's important that you take that into consideration because, again, if you're playing the wrong golf ball and if you're not playing the right grips and you haven't selected the right clubs for your game, that can be the difference of being a 25 handicap and maybe even a 15 handicap. It's not all about technique or skill level. Sometimes it's just what you're playing with and how you're managing yourself out in the golf course can make a world of difference. Brandon, I'm going to come back to you, and this is another question I want to talk to you a little bit about, and that is the short game, particularly putting. I think you might have some tips. We see all kinds of different putting stances out there. Some people get real wide, some people get real narrow, some people hunch over. Again, I know there's a certain personal preference here, but there are some general understandings of how we address the ball when we're putting as opposed to how we do when we're hitting our longer shots. Maybe you could give us a few tips on improving our putting stance and how we address the ball on the green that maybe might help people sink a few more birdies in the next round. What are your thoughts, Brandon?
Yeah, so I call it the 5 lines of putting, right? And so I am a teacher that believes that there is a lot more science and a lot less art in putting than what most people want to think. If you sat on a putting green at your typical club on a Saturday afternoon and watch Jimmy give Johnny a lesson, if I had a nickel for every time I heard somebody say, well, it's just whatever feels good, just do that. And that makes me laugh because if we said that about the full swing, none of us would have jobs, right? There are some fundamentals that have to be in place, that I think gives your body the best chance to allow the putter head to sort of swing in as natural of arc as it was sort of built to swing in. And without getting too technical, you've got to get your eyes over the golf ball. You've got to get your chest hanging out. I'll call it your shoulders and elbows hanging in front of your knees. That usually requires the weight to be a lot more on the toes and the knees to be a lot straighter than most people are comfortable with. You've got to get the putter shaft in the palms of your hands. Very different. We talked earlier in the show about the grip being in the fingers with the full swing. It's not in the fingers in putting. It needs to be in the palms because you want the putter shaft and your forearms to kind of be in line. I think you've got to do that. Your arms have got to be a little bit bent. The line that I draw, if you're looking kind of down the line, your hands are hanging right under your shoulders. If you think about that, your elbows kind of have to be bent for that to happen. And then if you think about looking at somebody, from what we would call face on, but if you were looking at their chest at address, the putter shaft should sort of be straight up and down. I can handle it being a little bit leaned forward, but I wouldn't want it leaned backward. And so it's hard to describe the 5 lines. In the putter book, there's actually a page where I took a picture and I drew 5 lines and numbered the 5 lines, in the picture. And so those things get your body in a place that provides room under your chest for your arms to swing and tilts your torso over in a way that allows you to kind of tilt your shoulders and the putter to kind of swing naturally. And so that's about as untechnical as I can discuss a few technical things, but I do believe that there are certain aspects of the putting stroke that if it doesn't matter who you look at that is a good putter, they all have them. Stance width is not one of them. And so there are some areas where you can have some freedom, but I think there are some areas where you really shouldn't have a lot of freedom. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of how I view it.
Yeah, and I think, again, as far as stance is concerned, obviously there may be situations if you're playing in a windy day, you might want to have that stance a little bit wider just for stability purposes. But again, we look at somebody like a Jack Nicklaus who had a very open stance, again, did all the things correctly, but he opened his body up a little bit, so he had a better view of the line, but he still managed to do the things he needed to do, and that was why he won 18 majors. And one other thing, Brendan, I just want to follow up on putting, because I think this is something that a lot of people have heard so many different theories and that on putting, and that is, we've always heard of, this, a more pendulum stroke where the club head is going straight back and straight through, particularly for shorter putts. But when we maybe have a longer putt, there's been some that have talked about where the putter head actually kind of comes in on the backswing a little bit, and then on the follow-through kind of comes in a little bit as well. Let's clarify that up a little bit. Is it more of a pendulum swing regardless of the length of the putt, or does the putter head tend to work in and then in again on the backswing and in the forward swing on longer putts? Maybe you could touch on that, or does it matter?
Well, yes, it matters, and no, it doesn't matter. So let me see if I can explain. Look, all putters are built with lie angle. It's actually illegal according to the rules of golf to build a club with no lie angle. So all putters have a putter head and a putter shaft that don't intersect at a 90-degree angle. So all putters will swing with some arc unless you actively manipulate said putter to make it not swing in an arc. Now, are there people out there that do that? Sure. You see them every day. Should they do that? No, I don't believe they should. Now, the phenomenon you're talking about is as you swing the putter longer, it will naturally arc more. Not because we do something different, just because the dynamics of moving something on an angled plane mean that the putter will move inside the further it moves back, and reverse on the other side. And then on the way down, it moves back out to where it was, and then as it swings through, it will start to move back inside again. And so, the only time it's really moving in a straight line, and I emphasize, I'm doing air quotes right now when I say straight, because if you had a piece of equipment that could measure it closely enough, you'd find out it's really not moving straight. But the only place it looks like it's moving straight is for an area that's about the width of 3 golf balls at the very bottom of the arc. That happens to be where we tend to hit the ball, or I hope it is, right? Anytime it moves outside, a width of about 3 balls, then it's going to start arcing a little. And the more it swings, the more we'll see that arc, or I should say should see that arc. So anybody that's out there that says, I swing the putter straight back and straight through, then my argument to that would be, then if that's what you're doing, then you're actively manipulating the swing of the arc in a way that neither the putter nor your body nor physics for that matter, really wants it to swing. Generally, I wouldn't advise doing that. Now, I'll say all that to kind of end that comment with this. At the end of the day, the shape of your stroke is not the real skill. The skill is starting the ball on your intended line. If you manipulate the putter and get it to roll where you want it to roll, then you might be able to get away with that. There's an argument
Right.
to be made that manipulating the putter makes it more challenging to control your line, and it would be easier if you just let the putter swing more free. But the shape of the stroke is not the skill. Starting the ball on line is a skill. It's just that allowing the putter to swing in a more naturally, geometric and laws of physics kind of natural way generally provides you a better opportunity to make the ball roll straight. But putters aren't built to swing in straight lines. Now, I'll add this last part, and then I promise I'll be quiet. People talk about the pendulum. Putters are not pendulums, right? But if you looked at someone kind of at their chest, if you were standing in front of them and looking at their chest, the putter from that angle sort of looks like a pendulum, right? It kind of swings the same length behind the ball as it does on the other side of the ball, and there are some things that look like a pendulum would be swinging, and some of those ideas aren't bad ideas to have, but putters are not really pendulums. They just sort of look like it from certain views. Now, you hear that a lot, and I've even said that sometimes because that provides people a good image, but we don't swing in straight lines in golf. We stand to the side of the golf ball, and from a laws of physics and a geometric standpoint, that just doesn't add up.
I couldn't agree more. Well said. Well, guys, it's hard to believe, but it was probably one of the fastest hours I think we've ever had in Coach's Corner. It just seemed to zip by. So I'm going to give each of you just a quick moment, if you would, to let the folks know if they want to reach out. And I want to thank all of you for doing a great job on the discussions tonight. I think you all hit it right on the head. Jamie, I'm going to start with you since we just finished with Brandon, then Pete, and then Brandon, I'll let you let the folks know if they want to reach out. But, again, thank you all for doing such a fantastic job, as always, on Coach's Corner. So, Jamie, go ahead.
Best to find me at Jamie, Jamie, at kiaigolf.com, my website. And my phone number, which I actually reply to phone calls and texts and things, is 760-492-4653. For international folks, just add a +1, and you'll find me on WhatsApp, Jamie Zimran. And as I said, I really do enjoy talking with people. I do a lot of virtual lessons. I do golf mastery schools. I travel quite a bit and give, just all kinds of lessons. And I also do a lot of work in the business and golf sector and with women in golf. So please reach out to me. Thank you very much, Ted, and thanks, everybody. It was a great discussion.
Thanks. Pete, go ahead.
Thanks again, Ted, for having me on, and Jamie and Brandon. It's always great talking with you. They can reach me at PeteBuchananGolf.com. All my contact information is out there. I'm doing a lot of virtual stuff now, so I can reach anybody anywhere. So, don't hesitate to just send me a note. Let's start a discussion and talk about your golf game and move on from there. So, PeteBuchananGolf.com.
Perfect. And finally, Brandon, how can the folks best reach out for you?
Yeah, Ted, it's always a pleasure. Jamie, Pete, it's always great to be with you guys and hear other coaches and their perspectives. So thank you for that. Everything I have out in the world is under Stooksbury Golf. It's kind of a funny last name, but once you figure it out, you can find me pretty easy. It's STOOKSBURY. If you forget that, you can just go to bsgolf.com, and nobody laugh at that, right? That happens to be my first and last initial. Nothing nefarious going on there when I say BS Golf. But everything's out there: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, website. Happy to talk to folks. Just reach out to me via my website or one of my social media channels. And I don't put up new content as often as I should, but try to do it as often as I can. And so always happy to have a conversation.
All right. Well, guys, again, thank you very much, as always, for joining me on the Coach's Corner panel. And I think I will see all of you again one more time next month before we close out another successful season here on Golf Talk Live. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Ted.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Ted.
Bye-bye.
All right. That was the gang on Coach's Corner. We're going to take a very quick break to listen to some messages from our sponsors, and then we'll be right back with this evening's very special guest.
This edition of Golf Talk Live is brought to you by Golf Pal. the best place to find only the finest in golf training aids and accessories. Get in on some great deals on leading products such as Down Underboard, Rapsodo, Golf Slingshot, and more. Visit golfpal.golf today, and don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter. Golf Pal. We're serious about your game.
The following ad is sponsored by Golf Tips Magazine.
Are you tired of being short off the tee? And what about those 3 putts? Forget about it. It's time you got serious about your game. Golf Tips, the most in-depth magazine in the industry. For over 30 years, Golf Tips has delivered expert content such as the latest golf instruction from America's top pros, simple-to-follow practice and game improvement drills, fitness and mental game tips, equipment, training aids, accessory and apparel reviews, golf destinations and travel tips for every budget, and so much more. Don't miss a single issue. Go to golftipsmag.com and subscribe today.
All right, I'm very excited to be joined by my special guest this evening, Taylor Herber. He is the Vice President of Sales for Blue Tees Golf and a rapidly growing producer of golf rangefinders and accessories. He is a golf industry veteran with over 15 years of experience. His reputation to grow companies, exceed sales goals, and manage large teams to achieve multi-million-dollar gains makes him the ideal Vice President of Sales for Blue Tees Golf. He joined the company in December of 2020. Prior to joining Blue Tees Golf, he founded the H2 Golf Company, the industry's all-inclusive source for tees, spikes, towels, and accessories designed exclusively for PGA professionals on public golf courses and, of course, private country clubs. He also maintains extensive relationships with large buying groups and golf course management companies. The family-owned business in Temecula, California, also accommodates and caters to green grass facilities with their signature display racks. Herber remains the CEO of H2 Sales. Please welcome my very special guest, Taylor Herber. Good evening, Taylor. How are you?
I'm doing
it's a pleasure.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So let's talk a little bit. I've obviously read a few things out on your bio, but let's talk about what got you into the game. I always like to do that with a guest that's never been on with me before. Give me an idea of what attracted you to golf. When did you first start playing? And a little bit about your journey from where you first started to where you are today.
Yeah, my path, I think some would say, was maybe chosen for me initially. My father was in the golf business, with TaylorMade when the Metalwood first came out. I think my 1-year-old or 2-year-old baby picture has me next to a little TaylorMade den caddy with a miniature golf club in my hand. And so that's kind of how I got started in the golf business. I grew up in it, and then from there worked at multiple different companies, but I've enjoyed playing the game throughout my early. I really didn't get into playing golf until probably almost, early high school age, and played on the high school team a little bit, but have been around the industry for a really long time.
It's interesting and the reason why I asked that is it's always interesting to see and hear the diversity of how people got into the game. Many people, much like yourself, I was my father didn't work in the golf business, but he was a very good golfer, and he introduced me to the game when I was very, very young, like yourself. I got a little bit more serious, for lack of better words, when I turned 7. But, when I was 2 or 3, he took me up to the range and with a cut-down club, and, away I went and swung a few shots and probably played in the sand a little bit and did some other things. But he introduced me to the game, and, here I am many years later, as a teacher professional and doing these shows and things. But it's always interesting to hear some of the diversity of how people got into the game, what attracted them to the game. Some went on to become players in various different levels of the game. Others moved into other parts of the industry like yourself. So you mentioned that you've worked for a number of different companies. What attracted you to Blue Tees Golf? What was it about their business model, if you will, and what they were looking at doing with their products? We'll talk about the products here in a moment, but what specifically was it about their business that really appealed to you in your sense of understanding of the game?
Yeah, I ran into Blue Tees like many people have through their social media accounts, their unbelievable online marketing, et cetera. And I was kind of at the point in my career where I was ready to get out of golf and go do something different. This is prior to COVID. And, I continued to look at my golf life and go, I had a fantastic time. But financially, I continued to look at it, and I'm like, gosh, do I want to keep doing this? And then, unfortunately, and then fortunately, in some other aspects, COVID happens, and it changes the golf industry. And felt a lot like I was with a company called La Jolla Club Golf Company, which we were the #1 junior golf club company in the world. That was one of my father actually started that business, and was kind of my first job in golf outside of working at a driving range and things. And I got to watch that company just explode during the Tiger boom and throughout that process. And it kind of felt the same. I started seeing other companies, and so I started a little bit of a consulting firm and started working with 5, 6, 7 brands. And I reached out to Blue Tees and I said, I'd love to help you guys get into B2B, green grass retail, talk to some of my larger accounts like the Dick's Sporting Goods of the world and see if it's something they'd be interested in. So they hired me on a consulting basis in September of last year. And, the rest is kind of history since then. The brand has really grown since that point in time. But what really attracted me was kind of the young feeling of the brand. It felt like I'm 38 years old, so it catered to me. I felt like it was speaking to me. I felt like it was speaking to my buddies that play golf. I know a lot about the rangefinder and electronic space. Very familiar with GPS. Have worked with multiple companies in that aspect. And I looked at their designs. I looked at what they were trying to accomplish, and I said, I think they have something here. And so from there, as I said, I was consulting with them and then started full-time in January, at the new year, basically. And it's just been a whirlwind since then. Really, really fun.
Yeah, and I want to touch on a point that you alluded to a few moments ago, and that is about the industry. It is, there has been pros and cons, unfortunately, some cons with the pandemic, as we all are aware of. But for the golf industry, it has really been a well-needed booster shot in the arm. Unfortunately, it's piggybacked onto a pandemic, but, golf was really, in a lot of ways, I feel, kind of stagnant. There wasn't as much new growth as certainly in some areas there were, but in other areas there's not. There were a lot of people getting out of the game for one reason or another. And, we all kind of got forced to move back out in the golf course just to get out of the house. And, we kind of all got tired of watching Netflix and Amazon Prime and that for several months while we were cooped up inside. So it was good to get out and have something to be able to do. So there were a lot of new people coming in. And there's a lot of young people that have become drawn to the game. And not your typical, and I know you fall into the millennial crowd. I'm a little above you. I'm about 20 years older than you, so I'm in the generation that hit before you. But a lot of the younger generation is very tech savvy, very interested in the technology and how it can help improve their experience. And one of the interesting things I was reading about as I was preparing for tonight about Blue Tees and kind of a journey that you and some of your friends obviously love the game of golf. You've seen a lot of rangefinders, a lot of GPS products out there, but many of them were very, very expensive. Tell us a little bit about when you came across Blue Tees, what was refreshing about it, not just so much the brand, but some of the products that they have to offer. What was it that really spoke to you about the products? I've used it, so I know they're very, very good. But give us an overview of you and your friends as you were sort of testing things out. What really stood out to you?
So the company was originally started by 5 friends. 3 of them were out on the golf course. They purchased some units off of Amazon. They wanted to either get a GPS or a rangefinder, so they tested both and tried them. A lot of what they purchased were things coming direct from China, and somebody slapping a name on something, and the eyepiece would fall off, or just the optics were terrible, or it wouldn't lock onto things, and they're like, wow, this is not good. Luckily, we bought it through Amazon, so we can send everything back. But they were all looking for something different. They all, due to the pandemic, were playing a lot of golf, and they said, I think we can do this. And so that rolls into, obviously, conceptually, anybody can say that they have that idea. But fortunately, amongst that group of friends, they all had a bunch of different skill sets. One of them was an industrial designer. The other, had started a very successful apparel business and had some strong business background and banking background. And then the other had a really strong sales and marketing background. And then kind of the main key to the puzzle starting off is one of their friends was one of the top, direct-to-consumer marketing consultants in the entire nation. And so it's like, we have all these skill sets, can we bring this to market? And then from there, what I saw is, the first thing I saw was the design. As I said, I actually had my father and I, we had our own rangefinder that we stuck our name on the side of and had sold for a few years through a couple direct-to-consumer ventures that we had. And we ran into some of the same problems, in the sense of quality control and everything else. Just putting your name on something doesn't mean that it's going to be good. And so, I looked at the design aspect of this and I said, wow, they've got something there. Whoever they have doing this is very talented. I received the product. I ordered one. I opened the packaging. The unboxing experience was just incredible. I felt like I was, I'm an iPhone guy, so I felt like I was getting an iPhone, and I said, they're
right
onto something with this. And so that's what first caught my eye. And then I started looking at their marketing and who they were targeting. And obviously they were hitting a young male demographic initially. That's who they targeted. And I saw all the people commenting and liking and interacting with their brand. And it was exciting. It was different. It wasn't your stuffy brand feel that that's what I feel people don't enjoy a lot of times about golf is the stuffy or the elitist feel. Obviously there's a place for that in some aspects, but not. I feel that's not what the new golfer wants. They want it to be inclusive and fun and be able to get through a round in a decent time period. And so I felt like that's what Blue Tees was all about. And I got that all from looking at their social media.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. And again, you hit on another point. The generation, and I'm using your generation as the example, you've surpassed the baby boomer in population. And I'm just going to throw a few numbers out here just to give you a general idea. But the baby boomer is roughly around 70 million here in the United States. The millennials now have capped out for the time being at 72 million. So there are a couple of million more, so they're pretty comparable. But you're right. I think the new generation coming in is looking at golf unlike the traditional country club sort of theme or feel, if you will. That's not really something that they're as interested in. That doesn't mean that some don't belong or some don't partake in that, but that's not really – it's all about more entertainment, more fun. The 5 and 6 hour golf rounds is not something they're really interested in. They're looking at, have a good time, but time is more important to them than the game itself, so they want to make sure that they're utilizing their time. And if technology can help them do that in a fun way and creative way, then they're all for that. And you're exactly right. So, what's interesting about this, and I wanted to get you to talk about some of the specifics of the product. First off, let's talk about some of the products that they have to offer. We'll stick with the rangefinders for the time being, but some of the products that they have to offer on the market, the differences, and some of the technology that's in it. Let's go into some of the specifics, what it does, why it does it, and how it's helping the golfers that are using them.
Yeah, so a rangefinder, a laser rangefinder is, as many people that will be listening to a golf talk show will know what they are, but they're a point-and-shoot unit. You're most of the time shooting directly to the flag, getting your exact distance to the flag. Some of them can give you, include slope and calculate for that as well. Some of them you can turn slope on and off. Obviously, slope's not allowed, or maybe not obviously, slope's not allowed in tournaments, and so people like that aspect as well to have that function. But point-and-shoot units have been around for a long time. They initially started in hunting and military optics and everything else. So it's a very easy unit, self-explanatory to use, which is nice. I love GPS as well. I think there's a valid point for both of them. I think if you can, having both speeds things up and is a great option as well. But when it comes to our products, we initially started with two what I would say kind of your initial basic rangefinders. We had a slope version and we had a non-slope version. Both of them were priced very well. One sub just under $200, the other just above $200. And so a real palatable price point. And as I said, fantastic design, unboxing experience, all of the above. We knew, though, if we wanted to be a serious player in the rangefinder space, that we had to create something that could compete with the big boys. And there's only a couple of them. And they make fantastic products. They have been in the industry for a long time. So it was a big thing for us to not just come out with something that was subpar to those items. So kind of then enters our S3 Max unit. Our S3 Max is a slope switch unit. It incorporates basically the same high-end optics that you would get out of your $500-600 rangefinders. It has an internal magnet, which everybody loves. You can clip it to your cart or, any of your magnetic homes that you may have. You can pick it up with your golf club. So that's a great function. It also, it locks onto the target extremely quick, so it processes much quicker. It, stabilizes. So if you have shakier hands, it's easier to shoot with than our other units. So every kind of high-end aspect went into this product, the guts of this product, and we spent a year engineering that product. From there, a lot of it comes down to after that is obviously cosmetics. There's fantastic rangefinders out there that are honestly not as attractive as Blue Tees and the looks, and we feel like people want to express, especially in that age group we were talking about, they like to express themselves through fashion. You can see it in all of these apparel companies that are Travis Matthews, the G4s. There's endless companies that are coming out right now that are changing how people look on the golf course, and Blue Tees is one of those companies with our color variations and the looks of the product.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that's, again, equally important. I think you have to come out with a style and a design that's appealing to a different generation. It's the same thing with equipment and apparel as you talk about. Each generation is going to look at the game a little bit differently, and there's going to be things that are going to be appealing to maybe someone like yourself that might be different than, let's say, somebody in their 60s or beyond, even somebody in their 50s like myself. You might have certain things. Now, obviously, being in the business, I get to see a lot of the same things that you're seeing, so I get and understand some of the advantages. And one of the really cool things I get to see before the consumers get to see a lot of the new technology that comes out and the looks that are coming out. So it's very, very important. I agree that people want to be, they want to make it. It's like an accessory in a lot of ways with the style of it and that. So what are some of the features? Now, you've obviously used the product in that. What of some of the features that you've mentioned, what really stood out to you when you first tried it? And you've used other products, I know for sure. But what were some of the products specifically, or some of the features in this product that really stood out to you that you found benefited you as a general overview?
Yeah, and knowing some of the intricacies of rangefinders and the technology that goes into them, one area that you'll find with price point rangefinders, and I didn't really touch on that, Ted. I talked about how great the technology and how we're making it like a $400, $500, $600 rangefinder that's out there. What I didn't mention is our Blue Tees S3 Max unit sells for $260. And so it's near half the price of the number one selling rangefinder in the world. And so that aspect of it is obviously the price point is important. That's part of our success. We're not blind to that. But when I first took the S3 Max out of its packaging, the initial, just the unboxing experience kind of blows you away. And so, okay, already in the back of my head, I'm thinking, okay, this is quality. I may not be saying that, but just subliminally, I know that, this is a quality product. And then I pulled it out and, obviously we saw prototypes and we tested and everything else, but when I was able to look through the lens of our product, and I mean, it has crystal clear optics. That was the first thing that jumped out to me. And that's where, if you're going to skimp on a rangefinder, that's where people skimp. They skimp on the optics. They don't go to the high resolution because it's one of the more expensive aspects of the product. And then, the other part of it that I think is pretty cool about this Series 3 Max, which is something that, not a ton of rangefinders have out there. We have this little system in there, or a feature called auto ambient. And so if you're playing on like a dusk day or it's not really sunny out, and a lot of times when the display is black, it's hard to see when it's kind of dark outside.
Right.
And so our display actually automatically will turn red. And then the red will kind of dim as it gets, the red will get darker and darker as it gets lighter and lighter, and eventually it'll become black when, it's very bright outside and extremely clear. So it helps with seeing. And obviously if you're using an optics device, you want to be able to see. And then the stabilization and, if you've got shaky hands, which, I mean, many age groups, people have shaky hands. And so, it's something that can be a negative for a rangefinder compared to a GPS. And so that's something else. The product it's very easy to point and shoot. So that's what you want to make. You want to make a, crystal clear, easy to point and shoot product. And this accomplishes that.
Yeah. And again, it's at a very, a good price point too, because this is something, that I see with a lot of, even with some of the older golfers out there, that it's not an issue of being or not being more technically savvy. They look at it and they say, well, do I want to spend $500, or even $600 on a rangefinder? This is an option that's giving them as good a quality rangefinder, literally at half or even less than half the price. But they're still getting many of the same features and more in some cases than some of the top, rangefinders out on the market. And so that price point, with the benefit of having so many high quality features, can be the difference in swaying somebody to make that purchase decision. Whereas if they're looking at a pretty big hit in the wallet, then, they're going to either sit on the fence a little bit longer or dismiss it altogether and say, well, this isn't for me. So again, they've really, I think, done a superb job, and I've seen some of the social media as well of really marketing it out there. And I know that they do have a specific demographic that they've been shooting for, certainly in the earlier days. But I think they're going to find that it's going to expand into other demographics that maybe they hadn't counted on, just because they have come in with a great product at such a reasonable price out in the market. And I think that's obviously something that's gotten you very excited about as well, correct?
Definitely. And you know what I always think of when I think of the price point of the product, and then I look at some of our competitors, I think of my grandfather a lot of times. He's a great golfer, always dressed to the nines, but he retired and his goal was to play golf a lot, so he joined a men's club at his local city course, and he played there, on a weekly basis, multiple times a week. He loved golf, and he was a great golfer. And but he was on a fixed budget, and so he had his retirement, and but he didn't have the exorbitant amount of money to go buy the highest end of all high end. And so I look at an item like this and I go, this is right up Grandpa's alley. This is the perfect product for him. It's stylish. He loved to dress perfectly. He loved to look country club, but not necessarily be at the country club. And this item gives people the opportunity to do that, and they're getting a great value with the product. But as you said, we're we're starting to work on our target demographic as well, because when we first came in, it was, okay, we're going after millennials and young males and everything else. That was the quick ticket to get in and kind of get the brand going. But now we realize that there's a lot of walks of life that are buying our product. There's, men, women, I just look at the orders when they come in through our e-commerce site. And when I talk to our B2B customers and our larger customers, and they're like, we're shocked at all the different types of people that are buying these products. And so I think as a company, we're definitely going to transcend that just kind of little niche that we initially had, and start targeting our marketing in different areas, and looking at junior golf and, making things accessible to other markets as well. So we're excited to do that. It's a big part of our game plan for next year.
Yeah, and there's always things, as technology advances, there's always things that you can add and shift and make different. But to get the feedback that you're getting, from the product now helps you make those decisions. And again, you're opening, your original vision at Blue Tees might have been one thing, but it's morphing into something different and even bigger as people become more aware of it. And that I also noticed too that they have a magnetic strap available as one of their products. Maybe you can just sort of tell everybody what that's for.
Yeah, so the magnetic strap, there's some other products on the market similar, but some of them cover the buttons. They just don't work with every type of rangefinder. The strap, I would say, works for 99% of rangefinders that are out there. If you don't have a rangefinder that has a built-in magnet like our S3 Max, which there's a ton of rangefinders out there that don't have the built-in magnet, the strap works perfectly for that. It wraps around, looks very similar to a watch band. It was an innovative idea by our designer, and we not only sell a bunch of those just as an accessory along with our S2 products, which don't have the internal magnets, but it's become kind of like a golf tournament favorite. We logo it. That's one thing we do as well with our rangefinders. We do a lot of logoing with the rangefinders, a lot of tournaments. So there's, especially with tournaments coming back, there's a lot of people utilizing our rangefinders as a tournament gift. And so that's been kind of an exciting part of the business as well. You get this massive full field of people out there utilizing your product, and it's a pretty cool thing to see.
Now, you mentioned earlier on, that, again, sort of that younger male was initially the target, and, again, it's morphed into some other areas. Are you starting to notice a trend as more and more young female golfers come into the market? Are you starting to see many of them take an interest in the product and obviously technology in general, but are you starting to see some women taking note of the Blue Tees rangefinder as well?
Yeah, we looked at, obviously our mailing list as a company has been heavy male driven initially, but we did start to see, a lot of females purchasing product on our website. And then, we'd kind of reach out to customers and, seeing if they were buying them for their husbands or boyfriends, or if they're buying them for themselves. And we offer a really strong, personal use discount as well to a lot of the golf courses we work with, because we want as many staff members using our product as possible. It's fantastic. If they love it, they can present it to their customers really well and actually recommend the product. And so we do a lot of that, and I'm just amazed at how many female golfers as well, want to jump in on that PUD and utilize it. And so that was something that definitely was in the back of our mind, that, we knew that there's a lot of women joining the game of golf at a really rapid rate right now. And so how do we, target that market? How do we do it in the right way? How do we do it without, just pandering, and so where we have kind of come along with that is in our S3 Max unit, we launched 2 additional colors. Nothing technologically, more of a fashion statement. And, our Navy unit coming out with a Navy rangefinder, nobody had ever really done it before. It went along with our Blue Tees name, obviously, and so that's why we started that way. We launched a black unit, or a matte black unit, just recently. That product's it's done fantastic. And so that one's a really fun one. And then during that same launch with the black, we launched a pink unit. It's a real soft pink, so it's not like your bright, hot pink, loud rangefinder.
Right.
It's really, really more of a fashion piece. And then the metal ring on the front of it is a rose gold, look to it, and so it's really the case goes along with it. The microfiber that's in it to be able to clean the lens is a real soft pink. So just the entire presentation is amazing, really feminine feeling in my opinion. But then we've got a bunch of fashion forward guys that are buying that product as well, guys that like to wear pink. And so it's
right.
kind of interesting who's going for that one. But I do think that, that product, we've been getting it into a lot of retailers. It's available at Dick's and Galaxy and Superstores and in a lot of golf shops as well now. And we're seeing, that product's doing much better than I could have ever anticipated. It's really gaining steam. So that's an exciting one as well.
What's been some of the feedback from some customers that you've gotten? I know that you've got some things up on the website and that, but what generally has been some of the feedback and comments that you guys have received over the last, year or so since these products have been on market?
I think the first thing, I think people have the initial reaction that I did when I first saw the brand. They think it's a beautiful product. They think that the cosmetics of it are fantastic. The unboxing experience when they get it, you look at people that,
right.
Post up online and they're like, oh my gosh, I get 3 batteries with this. The microfiber cloth
right.
has their logo on it. They pay attention
right.
to all the details, and I think that's great. And then they use the unit. And a lot of people, because of the price point, they go in with the mindset, we made them feel good about it with the packaging, but there's still that little inkling in the back of their mind that, this isn't a big brand. This is a new brand. There's got to be a reason it's $260. And then they go take it out and their buddy has one of our competitors' rangefinders and they're getting the exact same distance. And then by the end of it, their buddy's like, well, yours is a little cooler looking than mine as well. So, where do I get that thing? That type of thing. So,
right.
That's kind of, I see the same thing over and over in the sense of the response. People love the cosmetics and then they roll into the technology and the usage portion of the product and it meets their expectations or exceeds their expectations. And that's, I think all of those points are the best possible response we could get from people.
Yeah, and that's what you want. The visual component is huge. It's the same thing if you're buying golf clubs or something else. People visually have to accept the look of the club or what have you. And in this case, the rangefinder, if it's aesthetically appealing to somebody, then that's part of the battle right there. And then obviously the price is another one. But functionality, it's great. It's only $260. But like you said, if you get it home and it's not really performing and, somebody's got a $500 one and theirs is outperforming it like crazy, to be able to say, hey, we can stand up with the big boys that have been out in the market for many years, but we're much better, our price is pointed much better than what they are for the same quality of technology. That says something. I want to ask you something as far as products on the market. We're seeing, a lot of companies, a lot of your competitors are now coming out with a watch version very similar to a smartwatch with a lot of that same technology in there to be able to get the GPS and so on and so forth. Is this something that Blue Tees, without giving away too much information, is this something that you guys are looking at adding to your product line, or are there other things that you have noticed that golfers have reached out and said, hey, we would really love this? Are you guys working on anything like that may be coming down the pike, or is that a secret for the moment?
You know what? Not a secret necessarily in the sense of GPS in general. The industry is split kind of right down the middle. Half GPS, half rangefinder, and then you've got your people that buy both and utilize both technologies. Are we opposed to looking at the GPS market? No, it's probably a natural progression that we may look at in the future. I can tell you that, I kind of talked about this earlier, but, Blue Tees is run by a bunch of a bunch of young guys and gals, and the company's growing really fast, and we're bringing in a lot of creative people, and we're not pigeonholing ourselves in one area, and we think that we can do some really great innovative things in the golf business, the sporting goods business. We think there's a lot of opportunity out there for Blue Tees. Right now we're focused on rangefinders. We do have some new products that are launching in the spring. We have a Bluetooth speaker, no GPS included, just a fun speaker that will be fantastic for golf. It's amazing how many people are utilizing music on the course and Bluetooth speakers to watch the football game while they're going. They're multitasking while they're playing, and I know some people don't like that, but even for myself, I'm a diehard Kansas City Chiefs fan, and if I'm going to play golf on Sunday, I'm going to have my game on. Otherwise I won't go out to the course. I kind of have another passion, and so I think mixing those things is really important and giving people the opportunity. If we want to keep growing the game, we can't deter people from showing up. And so I think, like this, the speaker's inclusive. I think it's fun. So that's what our brand's all about.
Yeah, and again, you touch on a great point. As I said earlier, there's nothing wrong with the traditional country club feeling. There's those that still ascribe to that. But I think one thing that for a while, and this goes to what I said earlier, as tragic as the pandemic was, it did a lot of good for the game of golf, not just bringing more people back out onto the golf course, but a lot of people that had never experienced golf before and really knew nothing about it other than what they've seen, an event or something on TV, and many of them didn't even watch that. And it's gotten them to think, and you're seeing a lot of innovation, a lot of new, not just technology, but a lot of new ways of approaching. And I think what your generation brings to the game, which has been long overdue, is a sense of returning the word fun to golf. I think for a long time, golf stuck to the traditional ways, very serious. And again, there's nothing wrong with playing a more traditional route. But I think what your generation and even the next generation is bringing is a sense of fun to the game. And whether it be through these new speakers and other products that may come in future apps, that sort of thing, I think it's allowed people to get out there and say, hey, yeah, it's a game and I want to improve and I want to be better. But, gosh darn, if I'm going to be out here for 4 hours, I want to have some fun while I'm here as well. And you can do it in such a way that's not disruptive. It's not like you're, putting a 500-watt speaker on your golf cart. That's a little bit excessive. Or a 65-inch plasma TV attached to the back so you can watch the game. But you are adding some accessories and design and style and things like that. And I think, as you pointed out several times, this is something that your company that you're involved with, Blue Tee, is doing. And they're recognizing that it's a growing game and that there's a different dynamic to it now than what was maybe 30, 40 years ago. And I think you hit it right on the head. It's a fun, new way of approaching a game that's been around for a long time. Would you agree? Yeah, I would agree. And I think there's some, I think there's other trains of thought with this as well, is if you look at the game and we're kind of talking about maybe like two polar opposites. We're talking about stuffy golf and fun golf. I think new people coming into the game as well, and I always enjoy this as well. I've played at nice country clubs, and I enjoy all the pomp and circumstance that comes along with that. They're fun, and it's cool to see that and the tradition and everything else. But I don't think that the new golfers coming in want to just get rid of all of that. I think they enjoy some parts of it as well, and I think that they are kind of looking at it and they enjoy the game and respect the game. But I mean, obviously there's going to be things on both sides of the spectrum. But I think that a large percentage of these people coming into the game want to be a part of golf as well and want to have some of that tradition included. And I see that when I see golfers out playing. People are respectful. They may not be tucking their shirts in as much as before because it's not required at that course that they're at, but they're still wearing a collared shirt. They're still wearing the apparel. Sure. They're not wearing. And what, I love playing at a course that I could wear
take my shoes off in Hawaii and wear my bathing suit at too. I enjoy that type of a place as well. So there's a time and place for everything, and I think instead of having that negative mindset towards the new people coming in, we all need to be very, very thankful that they are coming into the game, because if, I may still be a little bit younger in the sense of age, but I was in the golf business when we were all looking at each other like, why are we here? So this is, but now I know why I stayed, and now I know I'm here because Blue Tees is a great thing for the game of golf. So it's exciting.
Yeah, no, and again, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's, I agree with you. I think that there is I'll give you a good example. Recently here locally where I am, they had Stage 2 qualifying for the PGA at one of the local courses here. And, I went out and watched some of these young guys coming up in that, and they're still, respecting the tradition, but, you see in their style and a little bit of different flair and a lot of different ways of how they approach the game. But they obviously still have the same mutual respect for the game as well. But I think it goes back to what I said a few moments ago, is I think that, you have to have other options available. I mean, companies like Topgolf came along, and there's others. Next Links is another one that's up and coming, that's really very forward thinking in their development. And what's happening is you're seeing new opportunities within the golf industry to enjoy the traditions of the game, but also add something new that maybe people had never done before. So what it's doing is it's actually diversifying the game. It's saying, okay, it's not just this, there's this too, and there's that over there. So it's actually opening the door to a lot of other people that may not have had that golfing experience, maybe had an interest, but didn't think it was for them because they thought, well, maybe that's, you got a lot of money to do this, or you've got to do that, and it's just not the case. It's changing as so many other industries are, and I think for the better. And I think, again, you have to be willing to move forward in any industry that you're involved in order to really maintain enjoyment. Because if you stick on the same path, no matter how successful it has, over time, eventually it's going to die out. So I think, like you said, a lot of the new things coming out in golf are helping to really re-energize the industry. And like you said, there's many of us, myself included, there's times when I've thought to myself, gosh, do I want to be here anymore? But then I take a look at what's new and upcoming and some of the things, and it revitalizes and adds a new excitement to the game. So it's great that you're a part of it. And again, you've been around the game for a long time, as you mentioned. And I think that this particular company here is going to have a very long life, and I'm glad and grateful that you're a part of it.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for the compliments on that. And I was thinking while you were talking about, just the different changes and everything, I was talking to a management group that we got involved with, or a couple of them actually, and I just said, what are you guys doing that's changed, since the pandemic, and kind of what are you guys doing for the future now? And the biggest thing I'm hearing, which is really exciting, especially if you live, I'm in California and I've been here a long time.
Right.
So we can play golf here. We can play golf here year round. And so it's just, I look at what they were talking to me about, and so, I apologize. I've got a little guy that just snuck in my room here.
Yep.
Come here.
That's okay.
Come here, mister. Here, go over here, bud. Come on.
The next golfer.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the we all work from home at Blue Tees as well. So the work from home culture, I could be on the biggest phone call of my life, and the 3-year-old comes in and says hi. And if you lock the door, he will knock it down. So but not a problem. It makes it fun as well. But so anyways, I was talking to this management group. And the group, they're telling me kind of how they're moving forward with things, but they're all building out simulator rooms and finding ways for people to play in the off season. And I just love that aspect of golf. I love the fact that, when the deep depression, I always call it at the end of the year, the deep depression happens in golf, and everybody gets cold and their clubs get put away. They have an answer for that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I, like you, I'm in Florida, so I get to play all year round too. And it's a lot of fun to be able to do that. And it's always exciting to see some of the folks from the north that come down and take advantage of, as I'm sure out in your neck of the woods, to warmer climates and be able to do that. It's one of the benefits of being either in California or certainly Florida. But it sounds like, there's a lot of excitement at Blue Tees, and it's obviously an organization that is not only coming out with some great products, but also has a business mindset of, let's make this an enjoyable experience. Let's make this fun. Let's make it so that people, it's not, obviously all companies have to earn a living and make profit in that, but it's not all about, let's see how much profit we can make. Let's make the experience enjoyable, and the profit takes care of itself. And I think you guys have done a great job in getting that message out there.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Yeah, it's been a really, really fun ride so far, and I'm excited to see what the spring's going to hold in 2022, and we're gonna keep growing this thing.
Well, I'm excited for you guys, and I've received the product here a little while ago, and I've been playing with it. I'm going to get out this weekend, weather permitting, and enjoy it a little bit more. But it's from what I've seen, experienced so far. Again, I agree 100% with everything you said this evening. It's a great product. It does do what it says it does, and it is very aesthetically appealing on the eyes. I have the navy blue version of it, but I've seen the other ones as well. But it's definitely a great product, and I'm excited to see what the future holds for you guys and what comes out in spring of 2022. So I'll have you back, Taylor. You can come back on another show, and as things progress with some of the new products that come out, we can talk about those as well. But I want to thank you for joining me tonight. Much continued success for you and the rest of the group at Blue Tees. You guys have done a great job, and certainly a definite asset to the industry, and I thank you for that, and I appreciate you being my special guest tonight.
Oh, thank you so much, Ted. It was my pleasure, and I had a great time. Thank you.
Perfect. Have a great evening. Get out there and enjoy the weekend if you're playing or just having some fun otherwise, and I'll see you next time here in Golf Talk Live.
Thanks, Ted.
All right. Take care. All right. That was my very special guest, Taylor Herber, VP of Sales of Blue Tees Golf. And if you want to learn more about their product, you can go to blueteesgolf.com. And they've got some specials going on. You can check them out just in time for Black Friday. They've got some specials listed on their site, but you can get more information there. You can see some of the folks that have used it. There's some good testimonials on there, and it's definitely available at a number of different golf shops and that around the country. But definitely some great products on there. Check them out. Go to blueteesgolf.com and pick yourself one up. I think you'll enjoy it. Again, I want a special thanks to the gang on the Coach's Corner panel, Brandon Stewksbury, Jamie Leno-Zimron, and Pete Buchanan. Thanks, guys, for doing a great job. And once again, thank you to my very special guest, Taylor Herber, VP Sales of Blue Tees Golf. All right. I will be back next week with another great panel and another great guest on Golf Talk Live. I hope you join me. God bless everybody and have a great weekend.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this week's broadcast of Golf Talk Live. We'd like to thank this week's Coach's Corner panel, and a special thank you to tonight's guest. Remember to join Ted every Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Central on Golf Talk Live. And be sure to follow Ted on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you're interested in being a guest on Golf Talk Live, send Ted an email at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. This has been a production of the iGolf Sports Network.